Somebody is going to inherit you. Not just your money, not your house, not your possessions, not your last name, you. The way you handle pressure, the way you spoke when you were angry, the promises you kept, and the ones you did not. How you handled your money, how you treated people when they couldn't do anything for you, what you tolerated, what you confronted, what you believed, what you ran from, how you loved, how you led, how you lived when nobody was watching. Somewhere, somebody is learning what normal looks like by watching you. And here is the frightening part. You do not have to intentionally teach them, because some of the most powerful things you will ever teach will never come out of your mouth. They will come from your patterns, your reactions, your habits, your standards, your silence, your decisions, and sometimes the decisions you refuse to make. We like to think that if we don't decide, nothing happens. That's a lie. Indecisions still creates direction. Silence still communicates. Avoidance still produces consequences. And refusing to choose still leaves something behind. You are currently living with the consequences of the decisions you made yesterday. Some of them were yours. Some of them weren't. And today, you are practicing patterns somebody else may eventually inherit. And the decision you keep refusing to make, don't make your hesitation for neutrality. Every day you refuse to decide, you are still choosing the current condition. And eventually, what you refuse to confront may make the decision for you. So tonight, I don't want to talk to you about what you are going to leave behind when you die. I want to talk about what you are leaving behind while you are still alive. Because inheritance isn't only what somebody receives after you are gone. Sometimes inheritance is what somebody learns how to carry because they lived close enough to you. Welcome back to the Eminence Legacy Podcast. I'm Jose Luis Cadena, and today we close the Sovereignty series. 10 conversations. One question has been sitting underneath all of them. Who is leading your life? When we started, that question was about authority. Who gets access to your decisions? Who gets a vote in your mind? Who determines your standards? Culture? Comfort? Fear? The algorithm? Others people's expectations? Your past? Your title? The things you have learned to tolerate. We have spent this series taking authority back. But today, I want to tell you why that authority matters. Because sovereignty was never supposed to end with you. How you govern your life eventually creates an environment somebody else has to live inside. Your family, your marriage, your children, your team, the people you lead, the people you influence, and eventually, people you may never meet. That's where sovereignty becomes responsibility, and responsibility eventually becomes legacy. But before we talk about what you are leaving, we need to confront what you have already inherited. Because here is where we can get this wrong. You didn't choose everything that reached your hands. You did not choose every environment that shaped you. You didn't choose every example you were given. You didn't choose every wound, every absence, every broken promise, or every belief someone handed you before you were old enough to question it. But listen to me carefully. What reached your hands may not have been your responsibility. What leaves your hands is sovereignty. We are not here to spend 30 minutes blaming the generation that came before us. We are here to decide what the generation after us will receive because we were here. So today, we are going to talk about the decisions you made, the decisions you kept making, and maybe most importantly, the decisions you have been refusing to make. Because all three leave something behind. This is the inheritance of your decisions. Let's finish this. See, before we talk about what you are building, we need to acknowledge what you walked into. Because none of us started at zero. You inherited something. Maybe it was your discipline. Maybe your faith. Maybe work ethic. Maybe your father taught you that when you give your word, you keep it. Maybe your mother showed you how to carry a family through a season nobody thought you would survive. Maybe you inherited sacrifice, stewardship, resilience, conviction, standards. If you did, honor it. Don't become so obsessed with breaking generational cycles that you forgot some things are worth continuing. But maybe you inherited something else. Silence, anger, financial chaos, avoidance, fear, broken trust, an inability to apologize. A house where nobody talked about what hurt. A definition of strength that meant never asking for help. A relationship with money built around scarcity. A relationship with conflict built around escape. Maybe you inherited things nobody intentionally gave you. You simply lived around them long enough to learn them. And eventually, it started becoming how you live. And this is where ownership matters. Because understanding where something came from can explain you, but explanation cannot become permission. You can't say, that's what I was taught. Okay, now, what are you going to teach? You can't say, that's how my father was. Got you. Okay. But who are you going to be? You can't say, nobody showed me. Hey, maybe they didn't. So now you learn. Because at some point, legacy builders, you have to stop asking only, what did I inherit? And start asking, what am I going to do with it? Subtitle. You may not be responsible for what reached your hands. You are responsible for what leaves them. That's the shift from inheritance to ownership, from ownership to sovereignty, and eventually from sovereignty to legacy. Let me show you how inheritance actually happens. I want you to imagine a father who doesn't handle conflict very well. He is not a bad man. He works, he provides, shows up, and loves his family. But when things get uncomfortable, he shuts down. His wife wants to talk. He goes quiet. There is tension in the house. He avoids it. Something needs to be confronted. He tells himself, we will talk about it later. But later doesn't come, and eventually the family learns how to live around what nobody's willing to confront. Now there's a little boy in the house, watching, observing. Nobody sits him down and says, son, when conflict comes, this is how a man handles it. Nobody has to. He's watching. Dad gets quiet. Mom gets frustrated. The room gets tense. Nobody talks. Eventually, things calm down. Life moves on, and the boy learns something nobody intentionally taught him. When things get uncomfortable, we go quiet. Years pass. That boy becomes a man. He gets married and wants a good marriage. Then one day, pressure enters the room. His wife confronts him. His chest tightens. He doesn't know what to say. So, he goes quiet. She pushes harder. He pulls further away. Eventually, she says, why do you always shut down? And he answers, I don't know. That's just how I am. But is it? Is that just how he is? Or is he living inside a pattern he learned before he was old enough to know he was learning it? His father decided never to teach his son avoidance. He simply never decided to confront his own. And the decision he kept refusing to make eventually became a pattern his son would inherit. Sometimes, what one generation refuses to confront becomes what the next generation has to learn how to overcome. And don't reduce this to fathers and sons. I'm showing you a universal pattern. Money, nobody teaches the child finance chaos. They simply grow up watching money create panic every month, every week, day by day. Anger, nobody announces, this is how we handle pressure. They simply watch who gets yelled at when life gets hard. Marriage, faith, health, work, leadership, trust, apologies, boundaries, discipline. People do not only inherit what you intentionally teach, They inherit what you repeatedly demonstrate. Repetition has a way of turning behavior into normal. And once something becomes normal, the next person may never think to question it. Until one day, they hear themselves say, "That's just how I am." No, no. Maybe that's how you are. Maybe that's how you learn to survive. Maybe that is what was modeled. Familiar does not mean permanent, and inherited does not mean required. Inheritance may explain the pattern. Sovereignty decides whether the pattern continues or not. Now, here is where I need to get right in your face. Some of you are listening to the story thinking about what somebody else didn't do. I'm asking you what you aren't doing. What decisions have you refused to make that everybody around you has already learned how to live around? Maybe it's the conversation nobody brings up anymore. The boundary everybody knows you won't enforce. The habit everybody sees but nobody mentions. Or the decision you keep telling yourself you are not ready to make. Stop saying, "I haven't decided yet." Yes, you have. If the decision has been sitting in front of you and every day you choose not to make it, you are still making a choice. You are choosing another day of the current condition. You are deciding to continue in the same situation. Staying is still a decision. Last time, we talked about the danger of becoming comfortably miserable. But today, I need you to understand something worse. Sometimes somebody else inherits the cost of your staying. Sir, chain law. The decision you refuse to make does not disappear. It becomes an environment somebody else may have to live inside. Now, I don't want to leave you there, because if patterns can be inherited, then something else can be inherited too. Standards. And maybe that's the inheritance nobody gave you. Maybe you are the first one who has to build it. That is hard, because it's easier to repeat a pattern than to create a standard you have never seen modeled. But somebody has to go first. Somebody has to lead. Why not you? Discipline isn't always about forcing yourself to do something you do not want to do. Sometimes discipline is simply removing the debate. You already decided, that's it. In a story, you don't wake up every morning and ask whether integrity still matters today. You do not negotiate your character because you are angry, tired, or inconvenienced. You already decided. When emotion is running the flight deck, everything becomes negotiable. How you feel gets a vote. How tired you are gets a vote. Whether anybody appreciates you gets a vote. But when the standard has already been decided, you stop holding an election every morning. Most of the decisions that build a life happen on ordinary days, Tuesdays. Nobody's watching. No applause. You simply do what you said you were going to do again and again and again. consistency until the decision becomes a standard. The standard becomes a pattern. The pattern becomes culture. And culture becomes something somebody else learns to live inside. Certain law. A standard you keep renegotiating was never a standard. It was a preference. Some of you are exhausted because you are still debating decisions you should have made years ago. Motivation can start something. Discipline can keep it alive. But sovereignty decides who gets authority before the pressure arrives. Your children, the people you love, don't only have to inherit your wounds. They can inherit your standards. Your significant other doesn't only have to experience what you never healed. They can experience what you decided to confront. Your team can inherit a culture you deliberately built. If avoidance can be modeled, so can your courage. If financial chaos can travel, so can stewardship. If broken promises can teach, then kept promises can teach too. If one generation can pass down what it refused to confront, then one generation can also decide it all stops here. 10 episodes ago, I asked you one question: who is leading your life? At the time, maybe it sounded like a question about you. But after everything we have walked through, I need you to understand something bigger. It was never only about you. Whoever leads your life eventually influences what your life produces. And what your life produces reaches your marriage, relationships, children, friendships, teams, businesses, and community. Basically, anyone that comes to your near radius will be affected. Sovereignty isn't walking around saying, nobody tells me what to do. That is ego wearing a crown. Sovereignty is having the authority to govern yourself and accepting responsibility for what the government produces. Think about where we have been. We talked about the voices competing to lead your life. We confronted what happens when your mind puts truth on trial. We confronted permission becoming policy, policy becoming culture, culture becoming destiny. We confronted the titles you have allowed to answer questions they were never qualified to answer. And we confronted what happens when life becomes just comfortable enough that you stop demanding something different. And now, here we are at the end. The question underneath it was always, what kind of legacy is that leadership creating? Legacy builders, we have spent 10 episodes asking questions. So before we close this, I have 4 more. And I don't want quick answers. I don't. I want you to carry these with you. First, what did you inherit that deserves to continue? Second, what reached your hands that needs to stop in your hands? Third, what decision are you refusing to make today that somebody else may eventually have to pay for? And finally, if somebody learned how to live only by watching the way you live, what would you be teaching them? Don't answer that one for me. Live with it. Sir, chain law. Legacy is not only what you leave behind, it's what becomes normal because you were here. Legacy builder, this is where I want you to make it practical. 2 decisions. That's it. First, what stops with you? Name it. Not someday. Not eventually. Right now. Second, what starts with you? Maybe nobody showed you how to communicate. Learn. Maybe nobody taught you how to manage money. Learn. Maybe you didn't grow up seeing discipline. Build it. Maybe apologies weren't normal in your house. Make them normal in yours. Make them normal in yours. Maybe you inherited a low standard. Raise it. Maybe you inherited something beautiful. Protect it. Strengthen it. Strengthen it and pass it forward. Breaking something isn't enough. You have to build what replaces it. Because if all you know is what you refuse to become, your past is still setting the direction. Sovereignty asks something harder. What are you choosing to build instead? Sir, chain law. Breaking a cycle ends at the inheritance. Building a standard creates one. That's legacy. Not perfection. Not pretending you got everything right or under control. Not becoming someone flawless. Example for everybody to admire. It is deciding that because something reached you doesn't mean it gets permission to pass through you unchallenged. And because something good was placed in your hands, you have a responsibility not to let it die there. Before we wrap up, I want to invite you into the conversation. If something you have heard on Eminence Legacy, whether it's a core episode, the afterthought, fire and ice, or even a conversation from the past, left you with a question, challenged the way you think, or brought something to the surface you have been wrestling with, don't leave it there. Open the show notes and click the Ask Sir Chain link. Send me a question. It can be about something we said, something you disagree with, or something happening in your own life that you want us to unpack. Your question may even become part of a future conversation right here on Eminence Legacy. Don't worry about asking the perfect question. If it's real, it's worth asking. And if you are new here, stay with us. Tuesday is core. Thursdays is the afterthought. The conversation after the conversation. And right now, Fire and Ice continues on Thursdays with legacy quarters reserved for the conversation worth studying. Different rooms, different conversation, one house. This is Eminence Legacy. And if you are ready to do more than just listen, Ground Zero is the entry point. And if this conversation about decisions, consequences, and what happens when we keep postponing what we know hit home, my book, The Bill is Collecting, is available now. You can find it on Amazon. Both links are waiting for you in the show notes. If this series challenged you, Go back to episode 1. Hear the question again, knowing what you know now. And if somebody came to mind today, send them this episode. No sermon, just say, hey, listen to this. Follow Eminence Legacy on Spotify or Apple Podcasts and stay with us. Make sure also and leave us reviews. That helps. Let me lock this in. You inherited something. Some of it deserves to be preserved. Some of it needs to end with you. The decision you make, the habits you practice, and the decisions you refuse to make all leave something behind. You may not be responsible for everything that reached your hands, but you are responsible for what leaves them. A standard you keep renegotiating was never a standard. It was a preference, a decision. Repeated long enough becomes a standard. A standard lived long enough becomes a pattern, and a pattern normalized long enough becomes culture, and culture passed forward becomes inheritance. That's how decisions become legacy. 10 episodes ago, I asked you, who's leading your life? I hope you answer that question differently now, not with a name, title, or motivational cliche, but with the weight of the question. See, whoever governs your life governs your decisions. Your decisions shape your standards. Your standards shape your culture. And eventually, somebody else learns how to live inside what you created. That is why your sovereignty matters, not because the world revolves around you, but because it doesn't. Your life touches other lives. Your decisions enter other rooms. Your standards outlive moments. And one day, somebody may carry something because you carried it first. Taking authority over your life was never the finish line. Becoming responsible for what your life puts into the hands of somebody else was. I am Jose Luis Cadena. This is the Eminence Legacy Podcast. And together, let's rise to your eminence. So this week, when nobody's watching, when pressure shows up, when the old patterns feel easier, when the decisions come back, asking to be postponed, ask yourself, what am I handing them? And the decision you keep refusing to make, do not fool yourself. That is an inheritance too. You know now. So govern accordingly. Wake up. It's time to move.